This is a 2019 Cadillac XT5, and it's got a noise in the front suspension. I've already lifted it up on the hoist and I looked it over, and it actually has a worn out lower ball joint. Well, they only have a lower ball joint. There's no uppers on these, but nonetheless, the lower ball joint on the driver's side is bad. There's actually play in the ball joint, and I'm going to show that to you right now. This repair is going to be exactly the same for a 2017 through 2023 GMC Acadia because they use the exact same part number, the exact same control arm. So we're going to service the ball joint as a control arm. So if you look where the ball joint comes out of the lower control arm and goes up into the steering knuckle, when I wiggle the tire at 9 and 3 o'clock here side to side, you should be able to see the lateral movement in the ball joint. And there shouldn't be any. So the first thing we need to do is get this tire out of the way. And of course it has a locking lug nut. It's a Cadillac. So I ransacked the interior of the customer's vehicle and I found the key. It only took me 20 minutes. The lower control arm is attached to the vehicle in 3 spots. Right here, there's 2 bolts, and then there's going to be 2 bolts back there, and then the only other spot that attaches it is the ball joint, which has 1 nut right there, and then of course the ball joint stem. The best practice would be to remove this nut and to break this taper before we unbolt the other side of the control arm, because oftentimes this proves to be the most difficult part of this job. The nut on top of the ball joint is an 18 millimeter, and if you take a wrench, you can get the closed end over it, because if you try to break it loose with the open end, you're apt to strip it out. And then you'll be upset with yourself. That broke loose real easy, so. Okay, so the nut's loose, but it won't come out because it's hitting the axle. That's okay, just leave it right there. Once we break the taper on this and we drop this control arm down, there'll be room for that to come right out of there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to strike this portion of the steering knuckle with a hammer and shock it, and it should break the taper loose. Well, it definitely broke all the dirt loose. You can grab yourself a piece of chain and put a bar through there, pry this down, and usually it'll pull that right apart. Apparently I didn't hit it hard enough. Nope. This is where it helps if you have a helper to put some downward tension on that pry bar when you strike that. It helps tremendously. I don't have a helper, so. All right. So the next area that we're going to disconnect is going to be back here. You can see one of the bolts is right there and the other one is right there. They're not in focus, but those 2 nuts right there, I'm going to spray those down with some PB Blaster. The bolts go up from the bottom. Those nuts are 18 millimeter, and the corresponding bolt heads on the bottom are also 18 millimeter. So this is kind of hard to film, but you can imagine. You saw those nuts. Those are the bolts that run up through. These last two bolts we're able to get with a long extension and a wobble socket. Again, these are also 18 millimeter. Get in there or anything. Have to edit out all the things I'm about to say. All right, there's the last bolt. Just like that, that thing falls right out of there. That shouldn't be that loose. These will move, but usually under quite a bit of tension. Let's check out the new one. The new one is a Moog. There's the part number. I'll have a link to one in the description below, my Amazon affiliate links. I don't know whether or not it'll be a Moog one. I didn't get this from Amazon. It's always a good idea to do a side-by-side comparison and make sure we got apples and apples here. And it looks like we do. Oh yeah, see, that one's much tighter. Because it's new, of course it's going to be tight, right? Why wouldn't they put a grease fitting in there? A non-greasable part that's just going to wear out. Okay, Moog. You guys remember when Moog used to be like the best ever? Sadly, that's not the case anymore. So when we put the control arm back in place, the first thing we want to do is insert the ball joint into the steering knuckle. And then the only hard part, I think, will be trying to get this bracket over here, because that bushing is so stiff it doesn't want to give. Get that bracket up on there. Get the ball joint where it needs to go. Golly, I think it's there. Almost there. I'm using a plastic shot peen filled dead blow hammer. This is aluminum. I don't recommend you use a real hammer on that stuff. All right, I gotta get one of those. It helps if you have one of these alignment tools. You stick it in the bolt hole and you can kind of pry this around to get it where it needs to be. Of course, it's not staying. I'm just starting these nuts by hand. I'm not tightening them down because we don't want it to bind up. We still have to start these other two bolts. So I'll leave these ones in here just finger tight, and we'll lower the car down and we'll get these bolts started. To line up the last two bolt holes on this control arm, if you just push the whole brake caliper, I'm just pushing on the brake caliper and I'm moving the whole control arm. Makes it real easy to manipulate that hole into lining up for us. Okay, the threads are started. We don't want to go too tight with it yet because we still have one more to go. Okay, let me move this hose out of the way. You can see the last bolt hole in there. And again, even with that other bolt in there, you can see how much movement we have by pushing in on the brake caliper, well, the brake rotor, everything. By moving everything, because we left it loose, we can get that last hole to line up. Going to use my electric impact gun and tighten it to factory specs. So I'm going to take the wrench, put it up top where you can't see, but you just have to imagine. It's impossible to film it there, but you saw where I showed you those nuts are. And then we'll do the same thing to these pinch bolts. Okay, we have one thing left to do. Okay, we just got to put the nut on the ball joint stem, and of course, oh, it is going to fit in there. Well, how about that? It fit. I was going to demonstrate this tool. This is a neat little tool. This is a hook tool that's designed for grabbing onto lower control arms, and then you put your pry bar through there and gives you the ability to pry down if you need. It's neat, and it's handy for maybe prying this down to start that nut, but the issue I have is the hole for the pry bar is not big enough for my big pry bars. You can only fit small, skinny pry bars that often won't dislodge a tapered ball joint, but it's a neat tool nonetheless. And this is a locking nut. Enough room to fit a ratcheting wrench up there. There it is. You guys are watching me struggle. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Boy, I just made an ass of myself, didn't I? Damn it. I got the wrench stuck, guys. You know what that means. Oh, damn it. That means I made myself look like a fool. So I got to break the taper that I just set. It's not very tight, just to get the wrench out of there. Because what happened was, as I tightened it down, it pulled the stem up high enough to where it interferes with the axle. There we go. And we'll do it the old-fashioned way. You want to be in the video? You want to be the star of the show? Cadillac XT5 or GMC Acadia. Lower control arm ball joint, super easy. Anyone can do it. You can do it on the floor with a floor jack and hand tools. If you made it this far, thank you for watching. I appreciate it. What do you think? Will that work? Huh? All right. Good job. You're promoted. You're promoted.